Sign it. Rachel's voice didn't rise. It slithered across the table like steam off her untouched risotto, coiling itself around the air until it squeezed the oxygen right out of me. I blinked, fork halfway to my mouth. Excuse me. She didn't flinch. Didn't even glance up from her glass. Just rotated the stem of her wine like she was swirling time itself. Her manicured finger tapped the manila envelope she'd slid across the table. Power of attorney. Just for the business stuff. I need it for the expansion deal cities asking for streamlined signatures. My heartbeat thudded once, hard. You want me to give you complete control over everything we built? Just like that. Her eyes met mine. Cold. Glossy. Calculated. Not everything. Just enough so I don't have to keep dragging you into meetings you obviously hate. I laughed, quiet, disbelieving. This is about me missing one meeting with the zoning board? No, she said, voice razor thin. This is about you getting in the way. Every time I move forward, you hesitate. You slow things down. I need a partner who accelerates, Marcus, not one who hits the brakes. The word partner stung, like she didn't mean it anymore. I looked at her, really looked. Rachel, my wife, co-founder, the woman who once clapped when we booked our first client from the garage, had morphed into someone else. Her blouse was pristine, designer, nothing like the paint-smudged sweatshirts she wore when we started in demolition and renovation. The warmth in her smile? Gone, replaced by something smooth and rehearsed. And if I don't sign? I asked slowly, setting my fork down. The silverware clinked louder than I expected. She smiled, but it wasn't a smile. It was a verdict. Then we put things on hold, personally and professionally. So that's what it was. A transaction dressed in romance. Affection, withheld like a service I hadn't paid for yet. I leaned back, letting the silence stretch, letting her think I was calculating, when in truth, I was stalling the detonation of something I couldn't piece back together. You ever stare at someone you love and feel like you're seeing them through bulletproof glass? That's what that dinner was. A polite war. Forks and knives arranged like little weapons. The risotto went cold. Let me tell you something about me. I'm not the guy who shouts or slams doors. I don't throw things or storm out. I plan. I measure. I wait for the right lever before I pull. I was a high school drafting teacher when Rachel pitched the idea of flipping homes. She'd been fired from a real estate agency for assertiveness issues, which was code for not taking crap from men in suits. I admired that. God, I did. We pooled our savings, bought a fixer-upper in Missouri Valley, and lived out of a dust-filled trailer while renovating it. Our hands built this business. Her fire. My framework. 12 years of joint sacrifice. And now she wanted it in writing, her control, my surrender. I sat there that night, pretending to ponder. But inside, the gears were already spinning, because I'd seen what she became when she had unchecked power. Charming in public, ruthless in private. She thought she could run our business like a campaign, burn bridges, build new ones fast. I didn't want war. I wanted out. Not just out of the company, out of her web. What she didn't realize was this. She hadn't asked me to sign away control. She'd handed me the reason I needed to take it back. And what I do next? Let's just say, it's not in any of her plans. 3 days after the dinner, Rachel acted like nothing had happened. She kissed my cheek before heading to another client consult, tossed a to-go latte on the counter like she was still the girl who brought me coffee during drywall installs, and hummed something light as her heels clicked out the door. She always did know how to whistle over smoke. But I heard the fire alarms now. I wasn't asleep anymore. That morning, I sat in the home office we once shared, though lately it felt like I was renting space from a stranger. The smell of printer toner and pine-scented candles clashed in the air. I hadn't touched her desk since we converted the spare bedroom into our command center. Until that moment. Her tablet was sitting right there, half buried beneath renovation invoices and swatches. Still logged in. No, I'm not proud of what I did. But you don't look away when your gut's warning you like a siren. I tapped the screen. Email. Calendar. Messaging app. I didn't know what I was expecting. Maybe some legal prep for the power of attorney forms. Maybe another design file I hadn't been looped in on. What I found instead changed everything. It was a conversation thread, color-coded in her favorite midnight blue. Sender, Alex C. Subject, phase-out plan. Urgent, my chest clenched as I clicked it open. Alex Carpenter, our accountant. Her go-to for contracts, tax loopholes, and apparently, betrayal. Ratch, spoke with Jax at Stonehill Bank. He's on board for your solo line of credit under the LLC split. Just need Marcus out of the way officially. If you get him to sign POA, we can reroute renovation profits directly under your name within 90 days. He won't notice if you drip the transfer slow. I'll prep false audit memos for cover. Just play nice till then. Her reply came 5 minutes later, like she'd been waiting. Perfect. He's too methodical to suspect anything soon. Keep the language clean in docs, no red flags. And keep reminding Jax I'll bring him in on the rental conversion project once this is clean. Marcus is sentimental. He'll hold on to the illusion if I keep stroking it. I read that sentence again. Marcus is sentimental. The kind of line you write when someone has become a liability, not a partner. When love is just leverage. My stomach turned. I stared at the screen for a long while, maybe hoping it would change, that the words would shuffle themselves into something less cruel. But they didn't. They stayed there, static and surgical. That was the moment I stopped feeling shocked. Something colder took its place. I wasn't angry yet. Not fully. But I was done pretending this was just a rough patch in our marriage. This was deliberate. Strategic. She wasn't just leaving me behind, she was paving over my footprints. She forgot who taught her how to pour foundation. I copied the emails, encrypted them, and uploaded them to a private drive under a new alias. Then I turned off her tablet screen like I hadn't touched it. When she came home later that night, still glowing from whatever false charm she'd weaponized over drinks, I smiled. I asked how the meeting went. She said productive and kissed my cheek again. I kissed her back. The same way you would when someone lays a snare and doesn't realize they just stepped into yours. The next morning, I signed the papers. Right there at the kitchen counter, while the coffee was still steeping and Rachel was in full performance mode, yoga pants, low bun, voice light as whipped cream. "You're sure?" she asked, flipping an omelet with one hand and watching me just a second too long. I looked her dead in the eye, offering the kind of smile that could be mistaken for love if you weren't listening closely. "Yeah," I said softly. "You're right. You need more control to scale properly." She blinked. Just once. But it was enough. Rachel didn't trust easy, especially when victory came without resistance. I could practically hear the suspicion ticking behind her smile. Still, she said the words I expected. "I appreciate that. It'll make things a lot smoother." I handed her the folder with my signature already dry. I'd used our usual blue pen. She liked blue, claimed it looked friendlier on contracts. It was a detail she'd notice. The kind of detail that would keep her from noticing the bigger play. That same afternoon, while she was off at what she claimed was a zoning board prep session, I knew now it was likely another meeting with Alex. I drove to a sleepy little town 30 minutes outside Omaha. No mutual clients. No digital footprint that could link me to her network. At a second-floor office above an antique bookstore, I signed paperwork for a Shell LLC. Restauraforma design. Same renovation model. Same eco-sustainability pitch. Same before and after aesthetic. But under a name that sounded fresh, sharp, like hope, polished with grit. It took under 2 hours to get it registered. Another 4 days to file patent protections for our original architectural blueprints. Not the flashy ones she showcased on our website, the real ones. The ones I sketched in notebooks back when we were still running wiring through gutted ranch homes. She'd stopped caring about the foundation years ago, which meant she forgot how easy it was to build something beautiful in the exact same shape, just on sturdier ground. Using the storage unit I'd quietly kept since our earliest projects, I began rebuilding everything. Branding kits, template mock-ups. I reached out to subcontractors we hadn't worked with in years, folks who respected skill and timely pay over flash and flare. I paid up front. Small bonuses. Handwritten notes. Looking to try something quieter this time, I'd tell them on the phone. Less drama. More quality. Most of them didn't even ask why. They'd worked with Rachel. They understood. Every evening, I'd come home and play the role. Husband. Co-founder. Supportive partner. She'd ask for advice on social media strategy. I'd nod. Point at generic analytics. Feign fatigue when she got too eager. And when she wasn't looking. I was charting my own course. I wasn't leaving yet. No. First, I needed her to believe she'd already won. Because when someone thinks you've surrendered, they stop guarding the exits. They forget to check the map for a back road they didn't know you were paving. And I was paving fast. It started with a phone call Rachel brushed off like static. "Jim's pulling out of the Glenview remodel," she said, flipping through a client folder as we sat on opposite ends of the living room. Claims scheduling issues. I looked up from my laptop, kept my expression bland. "That's odd. He's usually reliable." She waved it off. "He's flaky." I'll use Sosa's crew instead. But 2 days later, Sosa backed out too. No call, no warning. Just a vague email thanking her for the opportunity and saying they were overbooked. That one stung. Rachel didn't show it in her face, but I saw the way she double-checked the message, biting her bottom lip like she was searching for a clue between the lines. I stayed silent. You see, what Rachel never realized was that people remembered the way she made them feel, especially the ones she treated like tools instead of teammates. She was efficient, yes, but empathy wasn't in her toolbox. She squeezed people for performance. I built loyalty, and now that loyalty was shifting. Over the next week, 3 more contractors bailed. A cabinet maker, a roofing specialist, even the trash removal service that had stuck with us through mold and raccoons. Each gave a different excuse. New commitments, tight labor, rescheduling backlog. But Rachel knew. One morning she stood in the doorway to my office, arms crossed tight over her chest. Her tone was casual, but her eyes were sharp. Do you think someone's poaching our vendors? I turned from my spreadsheet, gave her the kind of look you reserve for a strange question from a stranger. Why would they? She didn't answer, just stared like she was trying to read my pulse through my eyes. She was hunting for tells, but I'd learned long ago how to breathe evenly under scrutiny. Later that night, I overheard her on the phone with Alex, the accountant, the man whose betrayal had been so neatly typed in navy font. They're not just leaving, she hissed, pacing the kitchen. They're disappearing. No callbacks. No referrals. Something's off. Pause. No, I'm not paranoid. I'm telling you, Marcus is being too calm. Bingo. I stood in the hallway, just out of view, savoring the irony. She used to love that I didn't raise my voice. Now it terrified her. And why wouldn't it? She'd expected a storm. Instead, she got fog, quiet, creeping, and impossible to pin down. The best part? I hadn't even done anything flashy. Just better rates, clearer terms, no double booking, and most importantly, respect. The kind that comes from looking someone in the eye and meaning it. The kind Rachel used to offer before profit margins mattered more than people. I heard her voice soften on the phone, uncertain now. No, I haven't asked him directly. If he is doing something, he's not being sloppy. She was right, because this wasn't revenge. It was extraction, clean, quiet, and inch by inch, I was pulling every nail out of the house we'd built, until she'd look up and realize the walls weren't holding anymore. You're not going to believe this, Jeremy said, voice breathless through the phone. Channel 6 wants to feature the Elmwood Project. They called it, wait for it, the gold standard of eco-restoration in the Midwest. You did it, man. I stood in the center of what used to be a dilapidated duplex, now transformed into a carbon-neutral haven. Recycled timber floors glowed under natural skylights, and rainwater tanks hummed quietly outside. The place smelled like cedar and promise. That was fast, I said, swallowing a grin. Jeremy, a contractor I'd worked with for over a decade, chuckled. You planted native grasses around a heat pump system and made it look like sculpture. Fast was inevitable. The story dropped that night. 3 minutes of clean cuts, sweeping drone shots, and my voice, calm and steady, explaining why sustainability wasn't a trend, but a blueprint for dignity. I watched it from a corner booth at a downtown bar. Alone. No champagne. Just a quiet glass of water and the flickering satisfaction of seeing Restauraforma in bold text beneath my name. By morning, our inbox was flooded. Inquiries, interview requests, even a note from a high school teacher who wanted her students to study the build. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Rachel was unraveling. I caught her voicemail by accident, her phone buzzing endlessly on the shared charger. Ms. Albridge, we've tried calling 3 times. The kitchen installation was supposed to be finished last week, and now you're ghosting us? My husband wants to pull our deposit. Call us back, or we're filing a claim. I didn't say a word when she stormed into the kitchen 10 minutes later, muttering something about lazy subs and sabotage. She didn't even glance at me as she powered up her laptop, fingers clattering across keys with brittle frustration. But I saw the email subject lines flashing across her screen. Late again. Delay penalties. Contract number 447. Is Marcus still involved? That last one made her pause. Long enough for me to memorize the exact curve of her spine as the reality began to press down. The clients were noticing. The investors were getting jumpy. And for the first time since our dinner table standoff, she looked uncertain. Of course, she hadn't connected the dots yet. Not fully. My name wasn't on any of the new paperwork. Restaurant was registered under an alias. Contracts went through a third-party administrator I trusted like blood. She couldn't prove a thing, but she could feel it. At dinner that night, she sipped wine slower than usual. "You seem lighter lately," she said, not looking up. I chewed a bite of chicken, swallowed calmly. "Just staying focused." She nodded, stirring her food. "Anything new going on?" I met her eyes. Steady, controlled, same old. A flicker of something passed over her face. Maybe suspicion, maybe fear. But she didn't ask again, because she knew, somewhere deep down, that the silence between us wasn't just quiet. It was strategy. And now, the world was watching. It came on a Thursday. Thick, cream-colored envelope. No return address, just that formal serif type and a courthouse seal like a stamp of war. I found it first, wedged between a stack of design catalogs and a grocery circular, and set it silently on the hallway console. She saw it that evening. I did the way you'd eye a ticking box in a war movie. "Did you order something from LegalZoom?" she asked, pretending it was a joke. I just sipped my tea. "Nope." She slid it open with a letter opener that had once belonged to my father, slicing too fast, too carelessly. When she read it, when her eyes finally reached the bottom of that first page, her fingers stiffened. The paper rustled once and went still. I knew what it said. I'd seen a copy of the complaint. She was suing me for intellectual property theft, claiming I had stolen our company's original designs, her term, and rebranded them through a shell to sabotage her operation. She cited unfair competition, fraudulent concealment, and my malicious abandonment of marital and professional duties. I didn't flinch. She looked up at me, something unreadable in her face. "You didn't think I'd find out?" I held her gaze. Calm. Silent. The truth is, I wanted this. I needed her to act. Because now everything I'd been preparing for could finally matter. That same night, while she was still pacing the kitchen in bare feet and fury, I went to the safe. I retrieved the folder labeled simply Form A-19. Inside, 3 notarized filings. A complete patent registration, my name alone, dated 4 months before our dinner table ambush. Designs, building schematics, conceptual frameworks, all backed by timestamped sketches and technical metadata. She never asked about the quiet nights I spent in the garage. Never questioned why I kept those old notebooks in a fireproof box. Rachel had always believed control was about aggression, force, volume. She never learned the real secret. Control is preparation. The next morning, my attorney served her a response. Counterclaim, defamation, and unlawful interference. I wasn't just defending myself. I was turning the spotlight on her lies. By noon, her lawyer was calling mine. By 4, I saw her pacing our shared office, teeth sunk into her lip, whispering into the phone like the walls were listening. They were. That weekend, a quiet storm broke across her business. One of the local trades blogs picked up the filing. The title practically wrote itself. Power Couple Implodes, Blueprint War in Midwest Renovation Scene. Suddenly, her PR team stopped answering emails. A sponsor for her online workshop dropped out with a dry apology about brand alignment. Even Alex, her precious, always loyal Alex, texted her late that night. I didn't read it. I just heard the buzz of her phone and the long silence that followed. That was when it hit her. This wasn't a standoff. This was a reckoning. And I wasn't climbing out of the house she built. I was lighting my own, brick by brick, on land she didn't even know I owned. The conference room was too cold. One of those rented downtown spaces with glass walls and a view of nothing. Just the side of another building, tall, steel, and different. Rachel sat across from me, polished to perfection in a slate gray blazer and just enough makeup to mask the pressure. Her lawyer, some stiff-suited man from Lincoln, kept glancing at her like he wasn't quite sure if she was his client or a loaded trap. Me? I was in a navy sweater. No tie. Calm. Like this was a meeting about faucet types and floor tile. Mr. Wade, the paralegal began, adjusting her glasses. As part of the discovery process, you've submitted an audio file labeled Supplemental Exhibit A. Can you explain its relevance? I slid the USB across the table gently, like it might break if I moved too fast. Yes, I said, folding my hands on the table. It's from a conversation that occurred in Rachel's office. She didn't know I was there. I didn't know I'd hit record, but when I found the file later, I realized it was instructive. Her lawyer opened his mouth to object, but Rachel beat him to it. "What is this, Marcus?" There was a crack in her voice. Tiny, but it split the room. "Play it," I said. The paralegal inserted the USB into the laptop. Clicked once. Silence. Then, Rachel's voice. Crisp. Confident. "Alex, relax. I'm not stupid. He's just a ladder. I'll climb, then kick it away." No sound in the room. Just the hum of fluorescent lights. Then Alex's voice, muted, chuckling. "You're cold. Rachel, again. I'm effective." Click. The file ended. No one spoke for 5 full seconds. Even the court reporter paused her typing. Her lawyer leaned toward her. "Rachel, what was that?" But Rachel was frozen. Her lips parted slightly, the color gone from her face. Not even anger, just the stillness of someone who realized the fall had already started. "I'd like that statement entered into the record," I said quietly. Her lawyer tried to object. Something about context, emotional privacy. But the damage was already done. It wasn't just about legal positioning now. It was character, credibility. The woman who had accused me of theft had just exposed, in her own words, her real strategy. It changed everything. Outside, the sky was gray and unmoving. I stepped into the hallway, breathing in the sterile hallway air like it might clear out the ache in my chest. I didn't want to gloat. I didn't even feel victory, just clarity. For so long, I had believed I was the weak one in our marriage, the stabilizer, the follower, the one who deferred in public because she could speak circles around a zoning board rep. But that recording? It wasn't a dagger. It was a mirror. And she finally saw what I'd become. Not her partner, not her tool, but her undoing. I don't know what she expected him to do, stand by her like some corporate version of a white knight? Hold her hand through the deposition fallout? Show up in court wearing matching arrogance? But Alex Carpenter didn't even make it to Monday. By Saturday morning, he was gone. Left a one-line email, regretfully, "I resign as CFO of Wade Grant Holdings effective immediately." No explanation. No signature. No loyalty. I read it 3 times before forwarding it to Rachel. I didn't even include a message. Just the subject line, FYI. She didn't respond. But 2 hours later, I saw her car tear out of the driveway like she was chasing someone who'd already disappeared over the horizon. Her illusion of control was unraveling, and I hadn't even touched the last thread yet. Not until Tuesday. That morning, I walked into the DA's office with a folder so thick it needed 2 clasps to stay shut. Inside, the original tax filings Rachel and I had signed together 2 years ago, and the altered ones Alex had submitted last year. See, I'd made backups of everything when I started seeing red flags. Back then, I didn't even know what I was looking for. Just knew it felt off, like our income looked thinner than it should have, like deductions weren't lining up with our actual costs. I handed the folder to the assistant district attorney, an ex-auditor with a photographic memory and zero tolerance for financial games. Within 20 minutes, she was making calls. By that afternoon, a subpoena was issued for Rachel under suspicion of perjury and tax document tampering. And suddenly, this wasn't just about a crumbling marriage or intellectual property. It was about criminal liability. I saw her 2 days later, waiting in the hallway outside her attorney's office. She looked smaller somehow. Her blazer hung off her frame like it didn't fit anymore, and her eyes had that frantic darting quality people get when they're trying to rewrite a story while the credits are already rolling. "You did this," she said quietly. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. She stood, voice cracking. "You think this makes you right?" "No," I said. "It just makes you visible." That was the thing about lies. They grow best in shadows. But once you bring them into light, they don't just dissolve. They burn. And Rachel was learning that lesson in real time. Her allies had scattered. The PR team she swore by? Gone. Alex, the man who once called her the most strategic thinker I've ever known? Now a ghost in the system. His LinkedIn page was wiped clean. His phone went to voicemail. Rumor had it he was heading out of state. All she had left was spin, and no one to spin it to. But the worst part wasn't the legal fallout or the corporate collapse. It was that look in her eyes. The one that finally understood I hadn't ruined her. She'd done that herself? The proposal came folded in layers of polite language, email attachments, digital signatures, lawyer-phrased sentences that all meant one thing: surrender. Rachel wanted out. Or at least, she wanted out with enough dignity to pretend she'd left on her own terms. Her lawyer called it a gracious compromise. She'd drop all claims, dissolve the shared company, relinquish public stake in the designs, but she wanted a buyout. A generous one. 40% ownership of the remaining properties. 30% in the spin-off she couldn't prove I'd built. And a clean PR clause stating the split was strategic divergence, not fallout. I read the proposal 3 times. Then I wrote my response in 1 sentence. She can keep everything. Just let me take the pieces she never touched. Her lawyer asked for clarification. Mine forwarded him a list. A beat-up drafting table. My father's wooden toolbox. The hallway mirror she always hated. And the couch from our first flip house, still with the stitched burn mark from when she dropped a candle during staging and laughed like it didn't matter. He wrote back in disbelief. Mr. Wade, you're refusing all equity offers? All business assets? I nodded, because she didn't understand. This was never about the money. It was about the original blueprints, the real ones, the ones you can't frame or patent or sue over. The kind made of intent, pride, memory. Rachel called me herself the next night. No lawyers. Just her voice, a little raw. You don't want anything? She asked. Not even a payout? I want what's mine, I said. You never wanted those things anyway. There was a long pause. You're punishing me, she whispered. No, I said. I'm just done arguing about who built what. I know what I made. And I don't need to see my name on a door to prove it. She went quiet. Then, softly, almost like she was speaking to herself, I didn't think you'd walk away like this. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. I didn't think you'd ever give me a reason to. The line went dead. And just like that, it was finished. We didn't meet again. Didn't shake hands. Didn't trade boxes or memories. The movers came on a Tuesday. I left behind the sleek furniture, the branded mugs, the rows of framed awards she'd curated along the office hallway. And I took only what still felt like mine. The scuffed mirror. The scarred couch. The table where I first drafted a dream no one else believed in yet. That was enough. More than enough. Because sometimes, walking away with less proves you were never chasing more. It was a Tuesday afternoon, clear, cold, quiet. I just left a lunch meeting with a sustainable housing firm in Des Moines when I stopped by a hardware store for a replacement leveler. Nothing remarkable. Nothing symbolic. Until I saw her. Rachel. Name tag. Branded apron. Standing behind the checkout counter beneath a flickering fluorescent light. She didn't see me at first. She was scanning boxes, nodding politely to an older man complaining about cock consistency. Her hair was pulled back, her nails unpainted. The signature jewelry gone. The blazer. The curated sharpness. All of it. Just Rachel. The way she probably hadn't been in years. I stood in the aisle, out of view, holding the boxed leveler like it was some sort of artifact from another life. She looked tired. Not weak, not broken, just real. No audience, no armor. And for the first time since everything detonated, I didn't feel bitter. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt still, like the past had finished folding itself neatly behind me. I left without buying the tool. Didn't speak, didn't approach, didn't need to. Because less than a week later, the trade magazine hit shelves with a headline I never would have written for myself. Built from ASH. The man redefining green construction in the Midwest, page 3, full spread. Profile photo shot in front of the Elmwood duplex, with its solar-paneled roof gleaming against a winter sky. The journalist had asked good questions. Not about the scandal. Not about Rachel. Just about what I believed in. Sometimes, I told him, you don't start over. You just start cleaner. The piece ran through my early sketches, the viral build, my new mentorship program for tradespeople burned by bad partnerships. My inbox flooded again. This time not with pity or gossip, but gratitude. Young architects, veteran contractors, people who'd been taken for granted. They didn't see me as the man who lost a company. They saw me as the man who learned how to build again, this time with fireproof hands. I found a copy of the magazine at a small bookstore in Lincoln. Tucked 2 into my bag, handed 1 to Jeremy the next day at lunch. He nodded as he flipped through it, pausing at the headline. She ever see it? He asked. I shrugged. Maybe. But it didn't matter. Because the truth wasn't just printed. It was lived. In every client who chose Restaurforma. In every foundation we laid with precision, not pride. In every room that held light and air and second chances. And maybe somewhere, on her break between shifts, she turned a page and saw my face. Not the one she tried to erase, but the one she never understood in the first place. The one she thought she could climb and discard. Only now, I wasn't a ladder anymore. I was the ground itself. She showed up late on a Thursday, not during business hours, not when the team was buzzing and the phones ringing. No, she came just past 7, when the halls were quiet, when I was the only one left tidying up notes from the day's final consultation. I heard the knock before I saw the silhouette. Rachel, framed in the frosted glass of my office door, like some long-forgotten memory that hadn't realized it no longer belonged. I didn't answer right away. I just sat there for a second, pen resting on my notepad, heart still as a stone in water. Then I stood, walked slowly to the door, and opened it halfway. She looked older, not in years, but in spirit. Her posture no longer carried that poised certainty, that tension of someone playing chess with invisible pieces. Her eyes were red. She'd been crying. And before I could say a word, she stepped in and whispered it. "You beat me." 3 words. Soft, shaking, barely audible above the humming light overhead. I didn't move, didn't blink, because in that moment, what I felt wasn't revenge, or satisfaction, or any of the cinematic things we think come at the end of a battle. It was peace. Not the peace of silence, but of understanding, of closure. I looked at her, really looked, and saw the woman I once loved. The one who used to scribble design notes on napkins, who once cried from joy when we sold our first home, who used to fall asleep on my shoulder during long car rides back from client walkthroughs. But she wasn't that woman anymore. And I wasn't the man who had tried to hold everything together just to keep her from falling apart. "I didn't beat you, Rachel," I said quietly. She looked at me with something like confusion, or maybe hope. I shook my head gently. "I outgrew you." The words didn't land like a slap. They didn't need to. They just settled into the space between us like bricks. Her lip trembled. She tried to speak, maybe to explain, maybe to apologize, but no words came. Tears welled in her eyes, and this time, she didn't try to hold them back. They slid down silently as she stood there, the air thick with everything we never said, everything too late to matter. I stepped back, reached for the door. She looked up suddenly, as if she'd just realized what was happening. But I gave her one last nod, not of anger, not of pity, just goodbye. Then I closed the door slowly, gently, and when the latch clicked into place, something inside me did too. Not hard, not cold, just done. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the handle, listening as her footsteps faded down the hall, as the building settled again into stillness. And that was it. No grand finale, no thunderclap, just the quiet close of something that had once meant everything and now meant nothing at all.